My name is Elara Vance. To the rest of the world, Vance Innovations is a billion-dollar green technology empire, a beacon of sustainability and the future. To my parents, it is a status symbol. But to me, standing here in the shadows of the convention center, it feels like a crime scene. I am 27 years old, the granddaughter of the company's founder. Yet, while 3,000 investors and journalists cheer in the main hall, I am hidden away in the technical booth, wearing black cargo pants, frantically fixing a glitch in the PowerPoint presentation for my brother, Julian. On stage, Julian looks like the perfect CEO. Tonight, he is announcing a controversial merger that will sell our grandmother's eco-friendly legacy to a massive industrial conglomerate. He calls it progress. I know it is a liquidation. He is selling the soul of this company for a quick payout, and my parents are in the front row, clapping the loudest. Through my headset, I hear a reporter interview my mother, Evelyn, near the stage. The reporter asks, "Your son is a visionary. But what about your daughter, Elara? Does she have a role in this new empire?" My mother's laugh cuts through the audio feed like a knife. "Oh, Elara?" she says, her voice dripping with dismissive sweetness. "She is our little dreamer. She just draws pretty pictures. She does not have the head for serious business." I grip the edge of the mixing desk until my knuckles turn white. For 20 years, that has been my label. The dreamer, the artist, the weak link. Because I cared about user experience and ethical sourcing while Julian cared about stock prices, they put me in a basement office with a minimum wage salary. They erased me. But as Julian raises his pen to sign the symbolic merger agreement on the giant screen, the door to my booth opens. I expect a security guard telling me to clear out. Instead, it is Mr. Sterling, my grandmother's estranged attorney. He is wearing a worn gray suit and holding a heavy, slate-gray tablet. He does not offer me a tissue for the tears stinging my eyes. He simply slides the tablet across the desk. "She knew this day would come," he whispers. My hands tremble as I pick it up. The screen recognizes my face instantly. A single, red notification pulses on the display. Founder protocol detected. Activate 51% override? My heart stops. I look down at the stage, where my family is raising champagne glasses to their greed. They think I am just the girl who draws pictures. They have no idea I am holding the digital kill switch to their entire empire. To understand why a 27-year-old graphic designer is holding the power to destroy a billion-dollar merger, you have to understand the house I grew up in. In the Vance household, the world was divided into two categories. They believed that empathy was a weakness, and that profit was the only metric of a human being's worth. My brother, Julian, was the ultimate shark. He was the golden child from the moment he was born. My parents invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into his education leadership camps, private tutors, and an Ivy League MBA. When he cut his first deal in high school, my father wept with pride. They groomed him to be a king. Then, there was me. I was the prey. I was introverted, sensitive, and obsessed with art. When I begged my father to send me to design school, he laughed in my face. He called my passion a hobby for failures and refused to pay a cent. While Julian drove a brand new BMW to his internship, I took out student loans and worked 2 jobs just to buy art supplies. I graduated with honors in user experience design, hoping that maybe, just maybe, my skills would finally earn their respect. I was wrong. When I applied to Vance Innovations, my father hired me, but he made it clear where I belonged. He put me in a windowless office in the basement as a junior packaging designer, paying me minimum wage. I was forbidden from attending strategy meetings. While Julian sat in the penthouse office as the CFO, slashing budgets and firing people to boost stock prices, I was underground, obsessing over sustainable materials and customer experience. But they made a fatal mistake. They forgot about Grandma Rose. In the final years of her life, while Julian was too busy networking to visit her, I spent every weekend at her estate. We sat in her garden, and she taught me the true history of the company she built from a garage. She saw something in me that my parents were blind to. Julian sees the numbers, she told me once, her frail hand covering mine. But you, Elara, you see the people. A company without a soul is just a machine waiting to break. You have the heart of a founder, not a follower. I didn't understand what she meant back then. I thought she was just being kind to her useless granddaughter. I didn't know she was secretly training me. She taught me to look for the details, the sharks missed, the quality of the materials, the ethics of the supply chain, the story behind the brand. She was arming me for a war I didn't even know was coming. And now, standing in this booth with her tablet in my hand, I finally understand why. The protective bubble around me burst 6 months ago when Grandma Rose passed away. She was the moral compass of Vance Innovations, the only thing holding back the tide of greed. With her gone, Julian and my parents didn't waste a single second. They moved immediately to strip the company of its costly ethical standards to prepare it for sale. To make the financial reports look attractive to investors, Julian ordered a massive restructuring. He needed to cut costs, and he decided to start with the people who didn't contribute to the bottom line. I didn't get a meeting. I didn't get a phone call. I found out I was unemployed on a Tuesday morning via an automated email. The subject line read, "Status update, role elimination, effective immediately." I read it 3 times, the words blurring on the screen. My own brother had fired me via an algorithm. When I texted my mother in shock, asking if she knew about this, her response came 10 minutes later. It wasn't an apology. It was a dismissal wrapped in fake kindness. "It is for the best, sweetie," she wrote. "Business is just too rough for your sensitive soul. Now you can find a job that fits your artistic temperament better. We will make sure you get a standard severance package." I spent that night in my cramped studio apartment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the crushing weight of their rejection. They hadn't just fired me, they had erased me. But as I packed my belongings, my hand brushed against something cold on the top shelf of my closet. It was a small, black velvet box. Grandma Rose had pressed it into my hands 2 days before she died. Her voice had been weak, but her eyes were fierce. "Keep this safe, Elara," she had whispered. "Don't open it yet. Open it only if they betray the mission. When Julian shows you exactly who he is, you will know what to do." I sat cross-legged on my floor and opened the lid. Inside, there was no money. There was a handwritten letter on her personal stationery and a heavy silver USB drive shaped like a key. I unfolded the letter first. "My dearest Elara," it read. "If you are reading this, then Julian has done exactly what I feared. He is smart, but he is hollow. He views this company as a piggy bank, not a legacy. That is why, in 2019, I separated the intellectual property rights and the Class A voting shares from the main holding company." My heart hammered against my ribs as I plugged the silver key into my laptop. A secure folder opened, revealing a document titled, "The Founder Protocol." Grandma Rose hadn't just left me a keepsake. She had legally transferred ownership of the company's core patents, the very green tech technology Julian was trying to sell directly to me. I wasn't just an unemployed graphic designer anymore. According to the documents on my screen, I was the owner of the very thing they were trying to sell. The next morning, I met Mr. Sterling at a diner near the waterfront. He explained the terms of the Founder Protocol over cold coffee. According to the documents Grandma Rose had hidden, the activation of my 51% voting rights had a strict time limit. Once the merger was officially signed at the upcoming board meeting scheduled for exactly 72 hours from now, the company's assets would transfer to the conglomerate, and my claim would be void. "Grandma Rose knew you would hesitate," Mr. Sterling said, sliding a document across the table. "That is why she put a clock on it. The deadline isn't a punishment, Elara. It is permission. You have 3 days to stop a billion-dollar mistake." I almost didn't do it. For the first 24 hours, the imposter syndrome paralyzed me. I sat in my apartment, hearing my mother's voice in my head, telling me I was just a dreamer who didn't understand the real world. I was terrified that if I walked into that boardroom, I would just be the punchline to their joke one last time. Then, my phone rang. It was Julian. He had received the notification that a special shareholder had requested an emergency intervention at the board meeting. He didn't know it was me yet, but he suspected I was up to something because I hadn't returned my building keycard. Elara, he sighed, his voice dripping with condescension. Security tells me you still have your badge. Drop it off at the front desk today. And please, don't try to make a scene at the office. Nobody has time to listen to the girl who draws cartoons. Go back to your coloring books. He hung up before I could speak. That insult was the spark I needed. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. He thought I was just drawing cartoons? Fine. I would draw him a map of his own destruction. I spent the next 48 hours awake. I didn't approach the problem like a CEO. I approached it like a user experience designer. I hacked into the supply chain data files I had access to from my packaging design work and I started visualizing the numbers. What I found made my blood run cold. Julian wasn't just selling the company for profit. He was selling it to cover up a crime. I traced the serial numbers on our eco-friendly filters. He had secretly swapped our patented biodegradable materials for cheap, toxic plastic imports to artificially inflate profit margins before the sale. I didn't sleep. I built a presentation. I turned spreadsheets into graphs and supply chain codes into undeniable visual evidence. By the time the sun rose on the morning of the board meeting, my eyes were burning, but my hands were steady. Julian wanted a business meeting? I was going to give him a design review he would never forget. The morning of the board meeting arrived with a gray sky that matched the knot in my stomach. At 9:45 a.m., I stepped into the elevator of Vance Innovations. For 3 years, I had been restricted to the service elevator and the basement levels. Today, I pressed the button for the 42nd floor. The elevator doors opened onto a world I was never meant to see. The executive suite. Floor-to-ceiling glass, Italian marble, and the quiet hum of billion-dollar decisions. I wasn't wearing a power suit. I was wearing a simple black blazer and jeans, my own clothes, my own armor. The security guard at the double-glass doors frowned as I approached. "Miss Vance," he said, checking his tablet. "This is a restricted closed-door session. You are not on the access list." "Is there a problem?" The voice came from inside the room. Julian walked out, holding a coffee cup, flanked by our father. He looked immaculate in his navy suit, the uniform of a man who believed he owned the world. When he saw me, his expression shifted from annoyance to amusement. "Elara?" Julian laughed, a sharp, performative sound. "Did you get lost on your way to clear out your desk? Or did you come to paint us a goodbye mural?" My father, Arthur, stepped forward with his disappointed parent face on. "Elara, please," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Don't make a scene. We know you are emotional about the layoff, but interrupting a board meeting is childish. We can discuss your severance package at dinner." They were doing exactly what I expected, trying to shrink me back into the little sister, the dreamer, the nuisance. A week ago, I would have apologized and left. Today, I stood my ground. "I am not here for a severance package, Dad," I said, my voice shaking slightly but holding firm. "I have business with the board." "You have business?" Julian scoffed, turning to the 12 board members seated around the mahogany table. "She draws cartoons for packaging. She doesn't even know what ROI stands for." "Actually," a voice cut through the mockery, "she does." Mr. Sterling stepped out from the corner of the boardroom. The room went silent. As Grandma Rose's personal attorney, his presence carried the weight of the founder herself. "Miss Vance is here at my invitation," Sterling announced, opening the door wider. "She has standing to address the board regarding a matter of ownership." Julian's jaw tightened. "This is a waste of time. She's unstable." "Let her speak, Julian," the board chairman said from the head of the table. I walked past my brother. I could feel his eyes burning into my back. But I didn't look at him. I walked to the head of the table, connected my tablet to the main projector, and looked at the 12 strangers who held the fate of the company in their hands. "What I am about to show you," I began, "isn't a cartoon. It is the truth." Julian burst out laughing, a harsh, incredulous sound that echoed off the glass walls. "The truth?" he sneered, looking around at the board members for support. This is absurd. She is a graphic designer, not a forensic accountant. She is wasting our time with some sentimental slideshow. It is not a slideshow, I said, my voice steady. I tapped the screen on my tablet. It is a testimony. The projector hummed, and the massive screen behind me flickered to life. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a video file, dated just 3 weeks before Grandma Rose passed away. Her face appeared in high definition, larger than life, looking down on the room with the stern, steel-eyed authority that built this empire. The room went deadly silent. Julian's smile vanished. If you are watching this, Grandma Rose's voice filled the room. It means Julian has tried to sell the company. On screen. She leaned into the camera. Julian, you are smart. You are charming, but you are hollow. You view this company as a piggy bank, not a legacy. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. Because of this, the video continued, I have executed the founder protocol. Effective immediately, the ownership of the Vance brand logo, the patent 404 green tech, and 51% of the voting rights are transferred to the only person who actually understands the mission, Elara. This is a fake! Julian screamed, standing up and slamming his hand on the table. She was sick! She was medicated. She didn't know what she was saying. She knew exactly what she was saying, I countered, swiping to the next slide. And she knew exactly what you were doing. The screen changed. This time, it wasn't a video. It was a complex data visualization, my design. It showed the supply chain logistics for our flagship air purifiers. I had used my UX skills to turn boring rows of data into a clear, damning map. You claimed Grandma was too old to understand business, I said, looking directly at the board members. But while you were focused on the merger price, I was looking at the components. Here, I pointed to a red spike on the chart. 6 months ago, Julian switched our patented biodegradable filters for cheap plastic imports. He scrubbed the change from the investor reports to inflate the profit margins by 12%. I looked at the shocked faces of the investors. This isn't just bad business. This is fraud. We are selling green tech that is actually polluting the planet. If you sign that merger today, you aren't just selling the company. You are becoming accomplices to a crime. The silence that followed my presentation was heavy, the kind that suffocates. Julian stared at the data visualization on the screen, his face draining of color. The fraud was undeniable. The biodegradable filters, the core promise of our green tech brand, had been swapped for cheap plastic. He had cooked the books to close the deal, and I had just served the evidence to the very people he was trying to impress. This is... Julian stammered, looking for an exit strategy. This is a misinterpretation. Elara is an artist. She doesn't understand supply chain logistics. These were temporary substitutions due to supply chain shortages. They were permanent substitutions to inflate your bonus. I cut in, my voice calm. I turned to Mr. Sterling. As the holder of the 51% founders' shares, I have a motion to present to the board. Mr. Sterling nodded, checking the bylaws. The floor is yours, Miss Vance. I took a breath. This was the moment Grandma Rose had prepared me for. I propose a vote of no confidence against CEO Julian Vance, effective immediately, and I propose the immediate termination of the merger talks. You can't do that! My mother, Evelyn, rushed from her seat. She grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into my blazer. The mask of the sophisticated socialite had cracked, revealing pure desperation. Elara, stop this right now. You are ruining your brother's life. We gave you everything. We gave you a job. We gave you a home. And this is how you repay us? I looked down at her hand on my arm. It was the first time she had touched me in years without a look of disappointment. You gave me nothing, I said, pulling my arm free. You gave me a basement office and 20 years of insecurity. You told me my empathy was a weakness. You told me my art was useless. But Grandma Rose gave me a chance. I am not choosing you anymore, Mom. I am choosing her. I looked at the chairman. The chairman, a silver-haired man who had built the company alongside my grandmother, didn't hesitate. All those in favor of the motion to remove Julian Vance as CEO? Julian looked around the table, his eyes wide with panic. Guys, come on. We're talking about $1 billion here. Don't listen to her. One hand went up. It was the chairman. Then another. Then the investors Julian had brought in. Men who cared more about avoiding a fraud lawsuit than loyalty to a 30-year-old MBA graduate raised their hands. The motion carries, the chairman announced, his voice finalizing the end of an era. Julian, you are relieved of command. Security will escort you out. Julian slumped in his chair. The arrogance, the smirk, the shark persona, it all evaporated. He looked small. He looked at me, and for the first time in his life, he didn't see a dreamer. He saw the boss. The aftermath of the vote was swift and brutal. Security officers entered the boardroom, the same men Julian had ordered to escort me out just an hour earlier. Now, they were waiting for him. Julian stood up, his face gray. He looked at me with a terrifying realization. He hadn't just lost his job. He had lost his identity. He walked out holding a single box of personal items, stripped of the CEO title that he thought defined his existence. I didn't stay to watch him leave. I walked toward the elevators, but my parents intercepted me in the hallway. My mother, Evelyn, had tears streaming down her face, mascara bleeding onto her cheeks. My father, Arthur, was shaking with rage. "You ungrateful girl," my father spat, his voice echoing in the marble corridor. "You just destroyed this family in front of 12 strangers. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stopped and turned to face them. "I didn't destroy anything, Dad. I told the truth. Julian destroyed the company's integrity. I just saved what was left." "We were trying to protect you," my mother cried, grabbing my arm. "We knew the business world was too harsh for you. We wanted to shield you from this pressure." "You weren't protecting me," I said, my voice steady. "You were erasing me. For 27 years, you treated me like a mistake you were trying to hide. You didn't keep me in the basement to keep me safe. You kept me there so you wouldn't have to explain why your daughter wasn't a shark like you." I pulled my arm free. "I'm done proving myself to you. The documents speak for themselves." I stepped into the elevator and let the doors close on their faces. As the car descended 42 floors, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt a heavy, quiet grief. I had just severed the last thread of hope that they would ever love me for who I was, rather than what I could do for them. But as I walked out into the sunlight, Mr. Sterling was waiting. "Remarkable," he said softly. "Your grandmother would have been very proud." Over the next week, the consequences rippled outward. Because of the supply chain fraud I exposed, Julian wasn't just fired. He faced an immediate SEC investigation and was blacklisted from the tech industry. As for my parents, I exercised my new authority to audit the company's expenses. I canceled the exorbitant consulting fees and travel stipends they had been drawing for years without doing any actual work. They tried to call me, pleading poverty, claiming they couldn't maintain their lifestyle without the company accounts. I sent a single email in response. "You always told me that people should earn their keep. Now is your chance to lead by example." They were stripped of the status that mattered more to them than their own daughter, left to navigate a world where their name no longer opened every door. 1 week after the board meeting, Mr. Sterling sat across from me in the empty executive suite. The board was waiting for my decision. They expected me to move into Julian's corner office, put on a power suit, and try to become the shark my brother had failed to be. "They are ready to appoint you CEO, Elara," Mr. Sterling said. "The title is yours if you want it." I looked at the glass walls that had separated me from the decision-makers for so long. I thought about Grandma Rose, who built this company not to dominate the market, but to improve it. "I don't want to be a shark," I replied, closing the folder. "I'm a designer. And a designer knows that form must follow function." I declined the CEO position. Instead, I used my voting power to hire Marcus Thorne, a seasoned ethical operations director who had resigned years ago when Julian took over. He would handle the logistics. I created a new title for myself: Chief Creative Officer. My first act was symbolic but necessary. I moved the entire creative team out of the windowless basement and onto the 42nd floor. We turned Julian's cold, sterile boardroom into an open-concept design lab filled with natural light, drafting tables, and living plants. The hierarchy that had suffocated the company was gone. When we relaunched the biodegradable air filters, the real ones, with the original organic fibers, our stock didn't just recover, it soared. The market was hungry for authenticity, exactly as Grandma Rose had predicted. In my personal life, the silence from my family was deafening, but it was also peaceful. I moved out of my cramped studio and bought a loft in the Arts District, a space with high ceilings and morning light where I could finally paint again. I didn't buy a luxury car or a membership to the country club to impress my parents' friends. Instead, I used my first dividend check to establish the Vance Visionary Scholarship. It provides full tuition for art and design students who come from low-income backgrounds. Students who, like me, were told their dreams were hobbies for failures. I still get emails from my mother occasionally, usually forwarding articles about Julian's legal troubles with a guilt-tripping subject line like, "Family should help family." I don't delete them, but I don't reply either. I realized that I didn't need to burn bridges to be free. I just needed to stop crossing them to please people who would never meet me halfway. 6 months have passed since the board meeting. I am recording this from my new loft in the Arts District. It has high ceilings, the smell of oil paint, and a view of the city skyline, the same city Grandma Rose helped build. On the main wall, I finally hung her portrait, the one that used to hang in the boardroom. Sometimes, when the morning light hits it, I swear I can see her smiling. I didn't take the title of CEO. I stayed as the Chief Creative Officer, focusing on sustainable design, the kind of innovation my grandmother would have championed. My salary is now $185,000 a year, plus dividends, but for the first time in my life, I feel like I actually earned it. As for my family, things are quiet. Julian is working at a mid-level logistics firm now. The humble reality of being a normal employee has been a brutal but necessary education for him. My parents call occasionally. The conversations are polite, short, and distant. We talk about the weather, never the past. We pretend the years of neglect didn't happen, because sometimes, peace is more important than closure. My grandmother used to say that mercy was the ultimate power move. I used to think she meant being weak. Now I know she meant choice. I had the power to destroy them completely, to sue them into bankruptcy, but I chose not to. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved to be free of the anger. Looking back, I understand something I couldn't see at 27. Grandma Rose didn't leave me 51% of her company because I was smarter than Julian. She left it to me because she knew power wouldn't corrupt me the way it corrupted him. My sensitivity, my dreamer nature, my obsession with art, those weren't flaws. The things that made me slow or weak in my parents' eyes were the exact things that allowed me to see the truth when everyone else looked away. If you are watching this, and you recognize yourself in my story, if you are the black sheep, the artist, or the one they said would never amount to anything, I want you to know this. You do not need a secret inheritance to prove your value, but you do need to stop seeking approval from people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Boundaries aren't walls, they are doors. They let you decide who gets access to your life and on what terms. My family hurt me for 27 years, but I didn't need to hurt them back to find peace. I just needed to stop waiting for them to see me and start seeing myself. That is the real inheritance Grandma Rose left me, and nobody can ever take that away.